Welcome back to the Faith Forward podcast. John Ackerman, Brian Bales, and we're talking about thankfulness one more time. So some of you are probably thankful that we're wrapping up this series on thankfulness.
Maybe not. You never know.
I think we might have saved the best for last, though. I don't know. We'll see.
That seems almost like a biblical allusion of Jesus and the water and the wine, but we're not talking about that. But we can, because technically we did. So I guess we are talking about what we're not talking about.
That's right.
Yeah.
So if you're just tuning in, here at Christian Fellowship Church in Ashburn, Virginia, we've been spending the month of November on this topic of Thanksgiving. And often the month of November feels like the month of Thanksgiving. And so we've done something that I feel like we don't often do during this month, is we've really paused on this topic, this rhythm of thankfulness, of celebrating who God is and what God has done. And as you've walked us through these 4 Sundays, through the Psalms, orienting us in the reality that thankfulness starts with who God is and then what God has done. And sometimes we can back end our way into it and we recognize what God has done, which then shows us who he is. But that thankfulness always takes us back to the place of the truth of who God is, being what we can be most thankful for. And then we looked at David's lived experience of thankfulness when all is not yet good. When all is not well, when all is not as he would like it to be or as it should be, that in the midst of death and despair and seeming hopelessness, he was able to find a legitimate way, an authentic way of being thankful, not contrived, not silver lining on a poop cloud, but genuine thankfulness, even as he was still crying out for things that were not yet good to be good. And then last week we talked about the reality that this needs to become our own lived experience. It's great that we have David. David's experience, David's recipe is meant to be something that we learn how to make for ourselves, not just go and eat whenever he brings it over for dinner. And so we find ourselves today in this closing week of November and this closing week of this series on thankfulness as we're about to turn the page into Christmas, and people are like, all right, this is what I've been waiting for. Let's go, baby Jesus in the manger. Oh, holy night. I want to remind us of something that we talked about in the series prior to this, and this is off note, so we'll just roll with it. We went through a series on what we call our spiritual rhythms, the fundamentals. And I know that as much as we talked about these being rhythms, that it's not a to-do list, it's not a checkbox, that there's still this feeling of, but I'm ready to turn the page, right? This is what we do. We finish a series and we turn the page. And I want to remind all of us, myself included, of how rhythms work. I try to teach myself how to play the drums because my stepdad is a really good drummer. So we had a set in the basement, and so he taught me a little bit about the snare. And then he taught me a little bit about the bass drum and the kick pedal and the hi-hat. And what I had to learn was how to keep different rhythms in different parts of my body.
Which is why I've never been a good drummer.
Well, and it's why I ultimately didn't get there. 30-second notes killed me. But, the right foot was doing one thing while the left foot was doing something else, and the right hand was doing one thing while the left hand was doing something else. And it feels like you're tearing yourself in 4 pieces, but it actually is possible for it all to be integrated. And this is the life we're invited into. It's the incorporation of all of these rhythms. And so we're not turning the page from the rhythm of thankfulness and celebration. We're about to incorporate what's next. And so keep that foot pedal of thankfulness running, even as we turn the page from this. But Brian, would you talk a little bit about where we're going this Sunday before we incorporate something in addition to the rhythm of thankfulness? How are we wrapping up this series?
Sunday, as will be expected, is a little bit different. A lot of times in church, we spend a lot of time talking about what we should do, but don't have the opportunity in the gathering of worship in a service that we would call a worship service to practice this much. And so we get a chance to practice some thankfulness. And one of my favorite parts that I'm looking forward to for Sunday is Rochelle Walker, Pastor Rochelle on our staff. She's actually reading some scripture from Psalm 136, which is our main text, and we're responding. And what's interesting about Psalm 136 is 20 some odd verses, and every verse, depending upon what version you read from, we did the English Standard Version on Sunday, ends with the same refrain. And his steadfast love endures forever. And his steadfast, no matter what situation. And one of the things I was trying to bring to the forefront is a callback to something I alluded to a couple of weeks ago about the character of God, that it's the same yesterday, today, and forever. That's what we're told in Hebrews chapter 13. And so if that is true about God, which we do believe, then his steadfast love endures right now for us, no matter what our situation is. He is the same as he ever was. He's the same as he ever was. And that's a blessing, not a curse. That's a greatness. And so we invited people to be reminded about some of the reasons, and these aren't all of them, that we can be grateful. We're reminded about that as power. We were reminded, looking through the history of the Hebrew people, that he provided with the people in the now of their moment. But also, it's really interesting. God is not a God that provides in your now and lets you figure out your future. He provided for them in the future. And what's interesting is one of the things that I didn't have a chance to play out on Sunday as much due to how we framed the service and how much time I was talking, or expect to be talking, is that sometimes we struggle like when, but God is faithful. You know, some of the things they're talking about in Psalm 136 was over 400 and some years before it happened. And I can't wait 40 minutes.
Or 4 minutes.
Yeah, or 4 minutes, yeah. And, you know, when we look at the provision in the future, when they walk into the promised land, that is over 400 years after when God gave the promise to Abraham in Genesis that you're going to have a land. Yeah. But between then and there was a long time in Egypt. And then, by the way, there was 40 years in the wilderness. And, you know, but he is faithful. And so I was hopefully encouraging myself and encouraging all of those is that the God of the Hebrews who loves them, and they were his children, is our God. Yeah. And he is our God and our Father, and he's still a good Father. And we could be grateful and thankful. But the one thing that I alluded to, that we were just talking to off podcast, is this. Even as someone who's been doing this series, preaching it, and as a teacher, you know this, John, there's never, you know, whenever you're in the middle of doing a teaching series or a preaching series, everything comes back to that. You're having a random conversation with the guy at the ice cream truck, and the next thing you know, you're talking about whatever it might be. But how easy it's going to be to turn the page into December, as mentioned, and all of a sudden turn our thoughts away from gratitude to Thanksgiving. But the root of our gratitude and thanksgiving really is December in some ways, that Jesus came. And then, you know, again, just so you know, it wasn't the actual month of December. That's just when we celebrate it. But when he came, and then the root of that is the gospel story as a whole. Yeah. And that we can be grateful and thankful. So one of the things we're going to do today is we're, as always, want to, in Faith Forward, take our faith outside of just Sunday and move it into our week, is begin to answer some of this, like, how do I make gratitude, thankfulness more than just one day, one weekend, 1 month? How do I not just know the ingredients for a day or a week or a month of gratitude and thankfulness? How do I not just, you know, put it in a month or a week or day where I'm actually trying it? Yeah. How do I submit and surrender? And it's something that I live, you know, the whole year long. Because one of the things I was trying to just allude to last week, and I stretched the analogy a bit, is that one of the reasons we ask the recipe is because we don't want to be people who just eat that once or twice a year when we meet those people. We want it available for us all the time. We are not to be people just once or twice a year, a month, you know, in gratitude, but all the time. But to do that, we have to have a level of intentionality, because our world does serve up problems a lot more than it serves up gratitude. And so that means that we have to be people who are really intentional. We said, when we actually going back to that series on the fundamentals, when we started that series, we said, no one stumbles into greatness. And by the way, we don't stumble into being more like Jesus. We don't stumble into practice these rhythms. We need to be people that at some level are doing our part, raising the sails, intentionality in that way, so that we can be living the life that Jesus wants us to live. So that's what we're going to talk about some more.
Yep. So full disclosure and total honesty, everything that we're about to talk about is something that I am practically aware of, right? This wasn't something that I went to Google because I'm like, I don't have any ideas for how we do this. But it's also not something I do regularly.
You know, I appreciate that confession, because I do think that's true. Ditto. I can just say exactly what John said, ditto. I think there's a natural thing that occurs, and I've said this before on this podcast, I'm pretty sure, but I know I've said it on Sundays in different ways here at CFC, is that we have a tendency to see the people who are communicating the information as arrived at that instead of arriving.
Yeah.
Right? And both of us are still arriving. Where we are on this journey of gratitude may be at a different place than where you may or may not be, but we have not arrived.
No.
And so what I don't want the enemy to do is get into our hearts and our minds and say, well, that's great because, of course, John could do that or Brian could do that because they're the ones talking about it. No, we can't do it at all. It's the strength of the Holy Spirit in us that does it, and to the extent that we allow him to be in control versus how we want to be in control. And the same is for you.
Yeah.
Same is for all of us listening.
Yeah. I don't fit well in compact cars, airline seats, or pedestals, so please don't put me in any of those three. So as we talk about this, like Brian said, the goal of today, as with every episode, is how do I do this? And as you ended your message on Sunday with, how do I avoid the trap? How do I avoid the forgetfulness of, Thanksgiving, thankfulness? Sit around the table and do the what are you thankful for thing. And then 364 other days.
Yeah.
It's like,
by the way, I mentioned that on Sunday, or I'm going to. I love that so much that we have a board of directors at Christian Fellowship Church that are my boss here, and we have a meeting once a month. And actually, we just did that meeting on Tuesday night, and we went around the room and did that for our time together. We always spend time together in prayer and the Word before we go. And I was like, man, just as you heard the stories, not long, like 60 seconds, 3 minutes, like you're like, God is so good. I left being thankful for the God that's in their lives. It's just, it's good. That should also probably be something we don't do just once a year.
Yeah, absolutely. And so again, here, everything that we're about to say through the lens of we've not arrived yet, we don't have this down, but these are things that we know are good and we have practiced in some way, shape, or form. And so we know they're reliable, right? It's David's thing in Psalm 34. I know this works, but then you also see David and all the other Psalms having moments of, God, where are you? And what are you doing? Could you please get your act together?
What I love about the Psalms.
Yep.
It is life in a mirror.
It is. It is. So we're going to run through, if I'm counting right, six suggestions for how do I maintain the rhythm of thankfulness beyond the day of Thanksgiving, beyond the month of November. How do I actually make this a rhythm in my life? So the first one, and I want to frame this in the way that God ordered our lives. When Moses goes up on the mountain and God says, here are my suggestions for how you all should live. One of the things that he did, and this actually predated Moses, was he carved out one day a week called Sabbath and said, you need to hold on to this because it's not just a day to stop working. It's actually a day of thankfulness and remembrance. And not because I need attention, not because I need you to tell me how great I am, but because you need a day at minimum once a week to stop and be reminded of who I am and that you're not alone and that it's not all up to you and that I am good, right? All those things we talked about in week one. This is who I am.
Yep.
And so you can be thankful.
Yep.
So that's the life that God ordered for us. And then on top of one day a week, he also implemented, I think, if I'm remembering the count right, 7 different feasts and festivals throughout the year, where again, on top of Sabbath, it was you actually need more time than once a week.
Well, and when we take other stuff outside of how we talk about us and responding, he put stuff like Sabbath on the land, like every 7th year. You know, there's something about this that if we limit it to God just wants us to rest because we're overworked or overburdened, we're going to miss it. And for many of us, we're going to choose not to do it because they're like, well, I'm not tired.
Right.
That's not the purpose.
Right. So this as orientation, this is actually the life that God carved out for you. Will you step into it? Will you make his rhythm your rhythm? And if you do, that's going to make this rhythm of thankfulness a whole lot easier because it's baked in. So with that said, however you structure your life, ideally the way that God ordered it, but however you structure your life, when you make time for thankfulness, I know oftentimes we do it in passing. We do it on the fly. We do it right before a meal, and we're super hungry to get into that meal, and the food's going to get cold, so you better not pray long. When you make space to engage in the rhythm of thankfulness, give yourself time to warm up. I've noticed this in myself, that I might throw out a quick, God, thanks for whatever, and that's not wrong, and that's not bad. But if I want to truly experience the rhythm of thankfulness, if I truly want to feel the connection with me and God, because again, that's the point of thankfulness, to bring me back to Him. We talked about this last week, that one of the goals of thankfulness is to bring us into His presence, right? It's not that God's looking for credit and attribution. He's looking for connection. And I won't often feel connected if I'm driving down the road and I hit the green light. I'm like, oh, thank you, God. And off I go, right? That doesn't mean my thanks wasn't sincere, but there's not a ton of connection in that moment. And I'm not saying, right, I'm not making this now prescriptive, that it doesn't count unless.
Yeah.
But to truly experience the rhythm of thankfulness, give yourself time to warm up. Give yourself time to enter into this. Give yourself time to notice what happens as you stay in a place of gratitude. And it's not about perfection of wording. It's not about hitting a particular amount of time. But notice what happens to your awareness of your connection to God, what you're aware of in terms of how you feel internally, if you allow yourself time and space to stay in this posture of thankfulness.
And I love your point here, John, of saying, hey, we sort of ease into it. We can be people that go from 0 to 100 miles an hour. We can think of all kinds of other places in our life where, say we're eating sugar all the time and then we just go cold turkey. Maybe there's another way to sort of slowly wean off of it. And so give yourself some time. And when this point is, and this is the idea, give yourself some warm-up time. I would like to just put over to the side also, show yourself some grace.
Yep.
I'm probably speaking more to me than anybody else. But I know oftentimes when we step into something again or step into something new, we have preconceived ideas of how we think it's going to go and how well we're going to do, and the perfectionist performance nature inside of us that isn't of God shows up, and we don't hit that, whatever it looks like. And then we start saying things to ourselves like, I can't believe you failed again, or we bring shame, or we may even think like, why do we even try? And I just want to say, that's not how God looks at us in those moments any more than we would look at a kid who just started trying to ride a bike and they only made it 22 feet. I mean, we wouldn't, as an uncle, as a parent, as a friend, look at that kid and go, I can't believe you just tried this. You only made it 22 feet. You magnificent failure. That's not how God looks at us when we try this. 22 feet is 22 feet. Get back on the bike. Maybe make it 23. And don't compare your journey to other people. That's another thing. I got 2 kids, and the way that they learned to ride a bike were completely different experiences. I'm now teaching my second child how to drive a vehicle. I've never prayed nearly as much as when that happens. It is a different experience, and I can't compare the two of them. Yeah. And you shouldn't compare yourself to someone else. Know this. Show yourself some grace. Most likely how you're looking at yourself as you step into this is not how God would look at you. Yeah. So give yourself warm-up time. Here's another 2. This, I feel like you're writing this for me, John, because I'm a structured person. Some might say obsessively, compulsively so. But it's really easy to turn something into something that's rote, not routine. And I love your turn of phrase there. Talk about the difference between routine and rote.
Yeah. And I've noticed it in myself, too, that there are times when I feel like I don't know what to do. Or, as I was growing up in church, I came up in a particular denomination where everybody said the same prayers, right? We memorized them. We all say them together corporately. And there was a lot of beauty and power in that corporate expression. But I also noticed, again, just for me, that sometimes doing the thing by rote, I just got on autopilot.
You're using this, and I have a visual in my head. I'm a very visual person of... and you've been out to Colorado a lot, and maybe you've ridden on horses on a trail. And some of the camps I've been to, there's been these trail horses. And those trail horses are on rote.
Yep.
Right? go back and forth. And as a person that rides it, you can get on road. Or it could be a routine that you're still riding the same horse, but you're taking in the beauty of those mountains differently every time. And that is one of those things where are we still, when we go from routine to rote, I think we disengage our heart and we're just sort of checking boxes. And I'm not saying we do that on purpose.
Yeah.
But it is that, and it matters. It's kind of this idea of like routine and road. I think I've used this analogy here before. If you have someone that's important in your life, for John, weekly shout out to Brooke. For me, Kathy, weekly shout out to Kathy. Hey, getting flowers is a good thing, right? But if we do it every week at the same time and the same flowers in the same moment and that sort of stuff, it misses something at some point. It's good, don't get me wrong, but it goes from routine to rote. And so I think one of the things that you put down is like set reminders, put up reminders. Again, if a world serves us up reasons to not be grateful, find ways to do it. Here's something I've been doing this month. Confession. I, as my neighbor who does not know Jesus, said this. Brian, you're really an aggressive driver. I don't think I'm an aggressive driver. We were all riding together to something. She didn't mean anything negative of it. She's close to Jesus. But I was like, I don't feel like I'm an aggressive driver. And I've been really I'm at least verbally aggressive. I wasn't verbally. I'm not sure as I'm physically aggressive, but my wife says I am. So what have I been doing? One of the reasons I think that I am the way that I am is I'm always in a hurry to get to where I'm going, not appreciating where I'm at.
Yeah.
And so one of the moments of Thanksgiving I've been doing this month is actually I've just been having my car read me scripture instead of some of the things. If you've not gotten the Bible app or whatever it might be, there's so many of them out there. The YouVersion, it has over 1 billion downloads. You can literally put that app on your phone, and if somehow you can link your phone via CarPlay or plug in to your speakers, do you know you can set it to a set of scripture on the way in and hit play? It'll read you in different versions. It'll read you in different accents if you pay more attention to a British person, right, than you do someone speaking. And I would say this, I have work to do with my driving.
Yeah.
But when it's been reading me scripture, it's been a way to stay focused and on God differently while I'm driving. That's wound up there. So find things to do. Does it mean I'm going to do this every day and every week? Probably not, because then it's just going to be noise in the background.
Right.
But tie it to other things. Set reminders. You walk a dog. You exercise. You mentioned washing the dishes. Brother Lawrence is phenomenal. If you don't know who Brother Lawrence is, Google him, look it up, read some of the stuff that he's done. It's amazing, because here's a guy that peeled potatoes and changed the world as being someone who's focused on Thanksgiving and worship by peeling potatoes.
Yeah. Yeah. And it really is, it's that simple. But again, the primary focus I've found with thankfulness is thoughtfulness.
Yeah.
It's intentionality. And that's why rote stops working for me. If it's say the same words at the same time, the same day, every day, I actually stop thinking about what I'm doing and I just do it. I go about my day and it's happening in the background. And again, that's not wrong. It's just not connection. And the goal is connection. And so the more that I can bring it to the forefront, right? And so I've got reminders on my phone that go off at different times of the day or different times of the week that remind me to do things that would otherwise slip to the background. Right? I've started to get in the habit of, on my drive into work, I love podcasts. There's like 15 different podcasts I'd love to be listening to, and I've got about a 45-minute drive each way. I could destroy my podcast playlist on a weekly basis with room to spare. But I've spent more and more time in the silence of my car. And here's part of what I've noticed, talking out loud to God. Because I really love praying in the silence internally, because that's where God is, right? You don't have to say it out loud for him to hear you. But I've noticed that if I don't say it out loud, my mind more easily tries to follow multiple tracks at the same time.
I read the note that you said here about say it out loud. I was like, oh, that's such a great reminder, because saying something out loud almost always involves a level of connection and intentionality at a greater level than saying it internally. It's not like God can't hear us internally or out loud. It's really much more for us in that way. And then, something else, when you're talking about make a routine in that wrote, you wrote down make lists. I'm not sure what direction you were going with that make list. I read it, and I love the fact that, I got to, like, here are the things I'm thankful for, and I should do them in real time. Like, what would it look like? Because I do this all the time. Like, if you say something to me and I'm like, oh, I don't know if I would do it, I write myself an email.
Yeah.
Like, okay, get to it when I do that sort of stuff. What would it look like if we just found a way to stop? It doesn't mean we have to stop and say out loud, thank you. Like, we write it down, send ourselves an email, put it on a notes list, and then we review it in the week. What if you took this challenge, right? I'm just making this up, by the way. I'm not saying you need to. What if, like you just said, for a week, every time I have this moment of gratitude, moment of recognizing, I'm just going to write it down. I don't do anything with it at the moment. I'm going to write it down. And then I'm going to set aside a time at the end of that week to look back and see all the places God has shown up. I will tell you, it'll change you relationally. So we're talking about give yourself some warm-up time, make it routine, but not rote.
Yeah, and what I love about that idea you just provided of, make a list and at the end of the week, look at all the ways that God showed up. That's another place that I've realized I have a missed opportunity for thankfulness, not out of obligation, but opportunity for connection. And it brings me back to when I was a kid and you're going through the training process of having to be reminded, what do you say when people do something for you, right? And the frequency with which, and it's a little embarrassing to realize now as a grown adult, the frequency with which I ask God to do things and then it happens and I don't act like a little kid of, what do you say? And not out of, controlled behavior and things like that, but I just asked God to come through and God came through and I'm on to the next thing I'm asking God to come through for. And I've not even paused for a moment, let alone an extended period of connection, and not to, abase myself on the floor and not to try to earn the next thing, but just like I learned as a little kid because someone taught me interpersonal communication. This is actually how we get to connect with God.
I don't want to, I feel like what I'm about to say could be received as shaming. So I want to be very careful I say this because I'm not actually trying to communicate it as shame. I'm actually trying to maybe communicate this as a diagnostic. Our lack of saying thank you or our actual saying thank you is at some level a thermometer of our recognition of connection. Hear me this. Think about some of these things that God has provided for you. And now, instead of the God of the universe who's everywhere we go, but we're not able to see him with physical eyes in the same way we could see the people around us. If someone had done for you what God did through other people or in your life at that moment, and you saw them personally and you watched them do it, you would naturally say, thank you. We would. Yeah. So there's an awareness of connection, right? So again, this isn't shaming in that, but it is at some level an identifier of how connected I am in that moment to the God of the universe based upon how because John, you open a door for me and I'm going to say thank you. I mean, like I grew up in the South. You just say thank you if someone opens a door. Like it's just natural. God opens a metaphorical door and I walk through and forget that he opened it for me sometimes. Yeah. So it is in some ways, so if you find yourself not saying thankful a lot, thank you, give yourself some warm-up time on that too. Yep. It'll take a bit, but know that it is in some ways this sort of, maybe our connection to him isn't at the level that we perceive it to be or should be, or he wants it to be.
Yeah. And again, I know for some of us that there were some consequences with not saying thank you when you were a kid.
Yeah,
and
that's
so
a great point.
We don't want to extrapolate this out
too
far.
To be grateful.
Right? Yeah. Right? Did you say thank you? No. All right, well then I'm going to hang on to whatever you got until you said, right? No, we're not going to do that. But again, it's a great opportunity. It's a great diagnostic of, have I been asking God for things and God's done them? And I've not. I've left him holding the door open and I'm off my way. And so again, no need for guilt, no need for condemnation, no need for shame, but opportunity for connection. And sort of in that same vein, another thing that I've recognized about myself, progression from kidhood to present, is I got forced to write thank you notes a lot because I was of a particular generation where that was the mode of communication.
I know someone, this is a side note, I know someone who so thank you noted they would write thank you notes to your thank you notes.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
It's like, when does it stop?
Yeah, exactly. It could have been a very, very, very long cycle of and these are physical paying, 50 some cents per stamp to send it sort of thank you notes.
I love that you talk about the price of stamps.
Yeah. Here I am waving my cane.
But I noticed that when I was a kid and I would be compelled to write thank you notes, it was always thank you for a thing. Right? Thank you for a toy. Thank you for a gift. Thank you for a card with money in it. Thank you for the sweater that I'm never going to wear, but I have to say thank you. So the next thing, as we're growing in this rhythm of thankfulness, is be aware. And the more I thought about it, the more I also wanted to add, beware the focus of your thankfulness. If the focus of your thankfulness is primarily on circumstances, God, thank you for this thing. God, thank you for this thing. God, thank you for this thing. That's not wrong, and that's not bad. But what I didn't realize when I was a little kid writing thank you notes was I could also have been thankful for grandma, grandpa, aunt, uncle, whoever. Thank you for loving me enough to send me a birthday gift. Thank you for being so thoughtful that the Christmas gift you got me was something I genuinely wanted and will really enjoy. Thank you for the connection that prompted the circumstance, right? And I'm a little kid, right? You're not just supposed to know that coming out of the womb. You're not just supposed to know that as a toddler. But I notice myself now as a grown adult mostly, that a lot of times my thankfulness to God is still gift-based. It's still circumstance-based, and that's not wrong. I'm not saying don't do that, but I'm saying be aware of the focus of your thankfulness. Is it primarily focused on circumstances, or is there also thankfulness for what God is doing through those gifts and through those circumstances to show you the kingdom of heaven that's all around you, as Jesus talked about? That's showing you the truth of who God is and the truth of who you are, not just solving the problems in your life. Again, be thankful when God opens the door for you. Be thankful when God shows up and heals when you've asked him to heal and provides when you've asked him to provide and surprises you out of nowhere with something unexpected. Be thankful for that. And we get to grow in our maturity and understanding of thanks and recognize that we can also be really thankful for the God who is showing us through those circumstances and gifts more of who he is.
And to take maybe that idea a little bit farther, when we think about this idea of not having transactional, circumstantial thankfulness, be aware of our focus. John just, remind us, hey, what if we're like, thank you for loving me enough to send the gift? But one of the aspects that John is talking about that I think we can naturally fall into is that was something good. I'm getting to the good thing behind the good thing. Another diagnostic for us is if we find ourselves limiting thankfulness to when there is a good thing behind a good thing, or a good God behind a good thing, but not a good God behind a thing we don't fully understand, or not a good God behind a thing we wish was different, or not a good God like in Psalm 34. Yes, it was a good God in Psalm 34 that God had saved David from the Philistine king.
Yeah.
But they were still in his Israelite king. I mean, he was living in a cave, and it wasn't just because he liked to camp. Okay? Right?
Yeah.
No, it was for the... And so it was still a good God behind circumstances not yet fully understood yet. And so maybe that's even sort of the next idea of not becoming transactional, because, again, we could make progress and say, I'm not just thank you for the good gift, I'm thank you for the good character behind the good gift, for love me enough to give a good gift. But then sort of next as we, it's called sanctification, become more like Jesus, allow the Holy Spirit to conform us more to the image of Jesus Christ in our life this side of eternity, is also being aware that we can be thankful in those moments that we don't understand.
Yep.
That's when we get behind. That's when we move beyond circumstantial. And I think one of the reasons, as I talked in Psalm 136, is, we can be thankful is because God is a whole lot bigger than we are. And there's a lot of implications about that. There's power implications by he's just stronger than we are. But he's also bigger in this aspect of, Isaiah says his ways are not our ways, his thoughts are not our thoughts. There's a list of things in that way that we could talk about. And I'm going to get a hobby horse for a moment. I grow weary of the line of thought that says this: the world is falling apart. I understand what people are trying to do. Don't get me wrong. I understand that. I'm not trying to be overtly critical, but it's not falling apart because Colossians says Jesus holds it all together. Mm-hmm. I might not understand how it's happening. I might not get it. I might want something different. All of those are like A, B, and C, and D, all of the above sometimes. Mm-hmm. But it is not falling apart because Jesus Christ is holding it together. And that is a level of God is a whole lot bigger than me than I understand that I've got to be willing to step into. And I think that's really important because you also talked about this idea that when I am, at least this is how I perceive what you were saying, when I am grateful and thankful, even when I don't understand and I accept the fact it's bigger, I'm accepting his invitation into a larger story that I might not know what part I'm playing. Yeah. I might not know what exactly is going to happen to get them, but I do know this. The beginning of the story and the end of the story starts with God and ends with God. In the beginning, God created, and in the end, God wins. Mm-hmm. That's it. But I don't know what he's doing and will do, but I can trust him.
Yeah. And that again, it's be aware of the focus of your thankfulness. And not that you're doing something wrong, but allow for the expansion of. Mm-hmm. And I don't know when the last time was I looked at Psalm 136. I've been particularly grateful for this month because I've recognized it's been a while since I've been in the Psalms. And I feel like, did they just put this in here yesterday? I was just reading Psalm 18 the other morning. It's like, when did this show up? And then you get to the verses that we were talking about this with music. You were playing a song for me this morning. Yeah. Like, have you ever heard this? I'm like, I've never heard this in my life. And you get to the chorus, I'm like, oh, I know this song.
I know this worship song that came from this.
Yeah. Uh-huh. So Psalm 136, the first 9 verses exemplify this expansion of thankfulness. Give thanks to the Lord, for he is good.
Yes.
And you could just park there for 15 minutes of thankfulness. God, you're good. Give thanks to the God of gods, the Elohim of Elohim. Give thanks to the Lord of lords. Give thanks to him who alone does mighty miracles. Give thanks to him who made the heavens so skillfully. Give thanks to him who placed the earth among the waters. Give thanks to him who made the heavenly lights, the sun to rule the day and the moon and stars to rule the night. There's not a thing in there about my particular circumstances, but giving thanks at that level invites me up and out into the magnified version of God's story as he sees it. It gets me, what was it, last year? The expression, eyes up, became popular, right? It lifts my gaze up and out from the story I'm living in to the story I'm living in. Mm-hmm. And then as you start to do that with, as you described, all of the scriptures, God in the beginning with us. This season we're about to celebrate, while we keep the foot pedal of thankfulness going, of Christmas, Emmanuel, God with us, God taking on human form so that we could touch him and see him. Revelation, God with us for eternity, God making his home with us, heaven coming to earth. That is the magnification of the story out to the level where God sees it. And when I practice thankfulness there, that shifts something in me, and it shifts my connection with God. And it magnifies, it increases, it expands what I'm thankful for. That doesn't diminish my thankfulness for the circumstances in my life, but it reminds me who this God is that's paid attention to my life in the midst of shaping the heavens, in the midst of a millennia-long plan for the redemption of all human beings. The God who has battled evil I will never fully comprehend in order to rescue me. The God who sacrificed himself to bring me out of darkness and bondage. that amplification of perspective changes the way that I engage with God in thankfulness. And as you said, it also allows me to be honest in my thankfulness.
Yeah. So, John said, hey, there's 6. So that's the 5th one. Be honest. Give yourself some warm-up time, number 1. Make it routine, not rote. Number 2, act like a kid. Say thank you. Number 3, be aware of where our focus is, not just circumstance, but kingdom presence-based solutions. And then, it's okay to be honest. I think this is one of the great accidental traps of a church gathering, and I think it's actually a tool of the enemy.
Yep.
Is that we say we live in a fallen, broken world. We know that. But when we're dealing with the fallen, broken world, or the dumb stuff that we've done, or a combination of both, we feel like we have to gather together in the church community and say, everything's fine. But it's not. It's not. God already knows that. So this idea of being honest is you can still say, here's what I'm thankful for in the midst of the not yet good. It's not saying, again, bury your head in the sand, as I've been talking about in this series. But it's also a call for thankfulness isn't living in denial. We need to have, I'm going to pause here for a second. And this is something I've been carrying with me for the last couple of weeks. And this isn't in the notes. But there's some of you out there who are listening right now, watching right now, who are going through significantly difficult things that you are not sharing with other people because you feel like it's not right or wrong, or it seems that is not God, right? God wants other people in your life to help carry those burdens. That's Galatians. Galatians says everyone carries their own burden. That's their backpack. But then it says everyone should bear one another's burdens. That means there are times in life where people have more than their own personal backpack. They got a truckload, and that's what the community of God is there for. You need people in your life. This is not in the notes. It's just something in my heart. If you don't have that, we would love to help you, whatever way. Email us, faithforward@cfcwire.org. Maybe it's at this, gathering of the believers in Christian Fellowship Church. Maybe it's some other place. We're not really into let's build Christian Fellowship Church. We're about what does God want us to do with the kingdom. And so be honest. And that means, be honest with yourself, be honest with others. But at the same time say, hey, there's still some good things. But I think even in the midst of when we start being honest, John, you made this note here, which I really appreciated. We can think that honesty and being thankful in the midst of not yet good means at least, but at least is not the same as thankfulness.
No. I think we said in a past episode, get at least out of your vocabulary. It's not helpful because unhealthy stuff grows in darkness, right? We know that biologically, we know that spiritually. And part of thankfulness is connection, and part of connection is honesty. And again, we go back to Psalm 34. David being okay, saying, I'm not okay with this. Mm-hmm. I don't like this. In fact, I'm fairly convinced this is not good.
Yeah.
But there are some things that are good.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean I ignore what's not good. It doesn't mean, as you said, I bury my head in the sand and pretend like all is well. But it means I come to a connection with God, and I am thankful for what is good, and I'm honest about what's not good with Him and with the people around me.
Yeah.
And I don't say things like, well, at least it's not worse, or at least I don't have, or at least it's not what somebody else is. Stop it.
Yeah.
Stop it right now, because that's not honest.
Yeah. Well, again, you alluded to it there. Get rid of it at least, and get rid of it thankfulness to the idea, well, at least I'm doing better than them. We could look at people and we can say, well, they have cancer. I'm just picking cancer as something that's real in the life that I live right now with people that I know. I go, well, at least I have diabetes. I'm just making stuff up, right? It's not as bad as cancer, so that's how I'm thankful. That's not it either. That's not it either. That's living in denial of your difficulty and your pain, and not understanding what it looks like to be honest in there. So if we're going to be grateful, we've got to be honest. And then, you know what, John? It is so hard for me to believe that we are about 45 minutes into this podcast, and this is the first time we're going to say something like this: ask God. Because we say it every week, because it's really the second name to this podcast. Because even in thankfulness, we need to ask God and make room to listen.
Yeah, it made me laugh, because as I was putting these notes together, I had the first 5, and it felt like it was coming in for a landing. And then I had that moment of recognition of, there is no place in here so far that is anything other than about my words.
Mm-hmm.
And again, that's not wrong.
No.
That's not bad. God loves dialogue with us, but the trap that we often fall into is we say all the words and then we hang up. And he caught my attention.
Thanks for coming to my TED Talk, God. I'm out. Right?
Right. Here's my red circle. Right. God caught my attention as I was coming to the conclusion of this and was reminding me what the Psalms are.
Mm-hmm.
That the Psalms are God's communication to David and others to express back to him.
Mm-hmm.
And so even in the Psalms, this isn't human generation. This is God-inspired communication to direct back to himself.
Yeah, God had to actually, in some of these, say, hey, tell me out loud what you're thinking.
Yeah.
And by out loud, write it down, have people sing about it, those sort of things.
Yeah. And so this is the invitation in the midst of thankfulness. And this looks like a couple different things. It can look like, God, I don't know how to be thankful right now because I'm pretty sure this isn't good. God, how do you see this? God, what are you up to in this that I can be thankful for? And I promise you this, God is not a silver lining on a poop cloud God. He is not an at least God. He's not going to come back to you with, well, you should be thankful because at least you're not. No, he will not do that. He will not come back to you and say, well, it could have been worse. Aren't you thankful for that? That's not him. But the reason why David is so often able to pivot in the Psalms is because he's open to God's input on his situation and for God to remind him of what's true. And there are things that are true even in the midst of horrible circumstances. David in Psalm 34 is giving thanks because he's alive when 2 whole kingdoms want him dead. And that matters. He's thankful for God's presence with him when he feels utterly abandoned and alone. He's thankful for God's closeness when it feels like all the people that are supposed to love him, including his father-in-law, have rejected him. He's thankful for the comfort that comes from God's presence and closeness, and that God's not saying, buck up, little camper. He's thankful that God continues to give him direction. Psalm 34 was his thanks to God for God's brilliant plan to act insane in front of the king of the Philistines. God, you've not abandoned me even in my hardship to figure this out on my own. Right? He's thankful for hope. God's reminding him, this ain't over yet. And so it can be with us, but often we get so focused on the problems, which is what you've been saying for all 4 weeks, that it's easy to do. Part of thankfulness doesn't just mean drumming this up on your own. It means coming back to the God who sees your story more clearly than you do and will help you remind your own soul, your heart, your mind, and your will of what is most true. He will show you not only how to rethink, to think differently about where you are, but I'll also show you what's coming. The frequency with which God reminds David, remember what I've promised you. I'm not a liar. It's coming. You can hold on to hope. There is something better coming. The frequency with which Paul writes, honestly, even if I die, it's a win. If I live, it's for Christ, and if I die, it's gain. I can be thankful that neither death nor life nor angels nor nothing can separate me from God forever. I can't lose. That will fundamentally reshape the way that I'm experiencing my circumstances. And you know what? Sometimes again, God's funny. As you finish the things you're thankful for, make space for him to respond. Because sometimes he might just say something as simple as, "You're welcome." Because thankfulness is about connection. It's not about making sure you sent the thank you card. It's about connection.
You know, John, as we kind of wrap up this section of the podcast series, and again, we're going to do something different in the month of December. We're going to go to some other things to really help you. If you get to this fifth point and you're like, well, I really don't know how to hear God well, great. Get back on in December. We've got 4 podcasts for you, 3 with me and John, and then 1 with Brooke Ackerman, as we mentioned, John's wife, talking through some of the ways to help do that. But know that no matter where you are and what's going on, if you have a relationship with God, he will never leave you nor forsake you. His very presence is with you. And so you could step forward into whatever that is, not with knowledge of how it's going to work out, but with courage of the one who does have everything under his control and power and provides both now and in the future. He is there with you. And in that way, sometimes we can even live in expectant gratitude before it's answered or before something happened, because he's the same yesterday, today, and forever.
Yeah. So friends, we're grateful for you. We're thankful for you that you've chosen to make us a part of your life.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you. Thank you for the gift that you give to us each week by engaging with us. And so on behalf of Brian, happy Thanksgiving to you and all those you love. Merry Christmas in advance, because we're not coming back till January, even though you'll see virtual us for the next few weeks. But truly, thank you from us here at Christian Fellowship Church, and Merry Christmas.